So Tom has worked within the veterinary community since 2014. He and his team at Florida Veterinary Advisors help associates, practice owners, and their teams find out the next steps to take within their finances. Tom is a podcast host on the Smarter Vet Financial Podcast, national speaker, publication author, VBMA speaker, financial advisor, and certified exit planner. Tom wants to help nourish the veterinary community so they have less stress and increase their confidence around financial decision-making. He is married with a daughter and a little Maltipoo, Theodore. And for CJ, although he is an analyst at heart, CJ enjoys working directly with veterinarians on their financial plans and feels most comfortable speaking in front of a large group of people. He is one of the founders of Florida Veterinary Advisors. He speaks on many financial and business topics across the U.S. and is a host of the Smarter Vet Financial Podcast. CJ does not want to only help people with their financial plans. He wants to change what's possible for them, to show them how to master the short game for them to win the long game and live incredibly fulfilling lives through impacting their communities. And as a shout out also to White Space Graphics for being the sponsor this month.
So what I had titled this presentation is how to create a successful team environment, which there's some other elements and things that we're going to talk through. And there's a lot of conversation from yesterday. We talked through a lot of different things with regards to being a person who wants to eventually transition out of veterinary practice and how do I sell my business or eventually wind it down. And today, what I was going to be talking a little bit more is about team stuff and how to motivate, engage. So it's going to be a lot. I keep it kind of high level, take some good notes. Hopefully I have some action things that you can follow along the way. So just to start all this off, one of the reasons why I'm in vet community, this is Theodore. So if you're curious what he looks like, that's him. He is a handful. He's 7 pounds. That's his car seat. He loves puppuccinos. Sure, if you have a dog too, you'd understand that he sits in my back of my car sometimes whining when I go through the drive-through because he knows he's going to get one. If you haven't seen our podcast, Smarter Vet Financial Podcast, available on Spotify, Apple. You can find it through our website. Make sure to check it out. We try to do TED Talk like conversations. Sometimes they go a little longer than we anticipate, but they're all focused around personal, business, finances. We do interviews with other veterinarians. Actually, tomorrow, Danny McVitie is getting released. I did an interview with her, so she'll be getting released on our show tomorrow. And then we've got a lot of other resources like race presentations. We have assessments, different things you can go through our website, other courses. We have a YouTube channel. So a plethora of different things. If you're curious from this conversation today and want to learn more, all no-cost resources to you. Quick snapshot of our team. We are a national planning firm, so we work in over 40 states right now. CJ and I are the founders of Florida Veterinary Advisors. We have another team member who's not on this one as well. Her name is Tyra Willie, but Isabel, Didi, and Tyra are our back office. We're actually looking to bring 2 more people on right now. And our vision within the vet community is to help majority of the population become financially independent. So my target's been 10% from the beginning. There's about 90,000 people in the vet community. So there's about 9,000 people we want to personally impact ourselves. So it's a big, lofty goal. I'm hoping we'll get there at some point. A little about myself, born in New Jersey, certified exit planner. Exit planner, for those who are not familiar with it, it's really anyone who can help from the birth of an idea of a business to the growth and making sure you're getting the best results from your business to the eventual when you transition and want to go into retirement. What are the steps, the questions, the people you're working with and everything? The certified exit planner helps coordinate a lot of that on the background. You don't have to be a financial advisor to be a certified exit planner. You can be an attorney, an accountant, a bunch of different people can have it as well. I have a finance degree from USF, animal lover, big reason why I work in the vet community. I played soccer, love Liverpool. It's my favorite team. You never walk alone. I love to read, educate. I'm actually reading a book called Mindset right now by Carol Dweck, I think is her last name. Great one talking about fixed versus growth mindsets. It's fantastic. And then I used to play instruments, the clarinet and sax, alto sax. And CJ, he's 4th generation Odessa, Florida. He's a certified exit planner as well. Finance degree from Florida USF, which we never met each other until we actually started working together. Which is very ironic at times. We graduated the same year. I've been in the finance business around the same amount of time. I think I started a month or 2 before him in 2011. He plays violin. He has a major in it as well, a 14-year-old daughter, and he knows Arabic. So if any of you know Arabic and you want to talk with them, I know you used to have friendly conversations with the gas station guy around the corner because you know Arabic and some other things. So it's very intriguing at times. So one thing is that I want to jump into. So when it comes to planning for anything in particular, just to set the stage for all of this, is that it's a lot of things are not a need until they are. And especially when it comes to working with others, or depending on the planning that you're doing within your business, and making sure taking the steps to be more proactive in how you're approaching things. So most people, what we see in society, tend to react to the things that happen because, of course, we're inundated with our own everyday responsibilities and things that we're having to work through, that a lot of other stuff tends to get neglected or pushed off just because it either seems too complex, really hasn't been brought to our attention. Maybe we've heard about it before, just never really have looked further into it. And what we're going to talk about more specifically is when it comes to, employees, having other teammates that we're working with. What are the necessary steps that we're actually taking to make sure that these people are in an environment with us that we can continue to get along and work together? And especially if they are employees of ours, how are we motivating and engaging them in an appropriate way as well? So first, I want to start off where we see from a business standpoint. This is how a lot of people operate, and I think in the hospice world, there's like a mixture of things from what I've seen, is that most people are genius models. And what I mean by a genius model, the entire business is dependent on you. So if you're not there, the business tends to fall apart. We've seen in a lot of veterinary practices across the industry, even with just business period, when you're a business, you're the genius model business owner. You're working in 6+ hours a week, putting a lot of time in. Maybe you're not having a consistent amount of relief or support along the way, or others that can help. Constantly putting out fires, which can be very draining, like energy wise, and it can feel like you can't focus on the things that you really need to focus on. And spending too much time working in the business, like meaning you're doing the everyday day-to-day tasks, versus being able to focus on how am I, like, what's my vision for this business and how am I continue to grow the business in the way to where I'm making the impact that I want to be making. It could be to the community, it could be to my personal financial life, a lot of different components. So this is where we see a lot of people where if you are a genius model from a standpoint, from a business business idea, is that anything that if you try to sell something that is 100% reliant on you, there's very little value in that at times. Maybe there's some goodwill, maybe some branding and something. So like in the consideration of planning, there's a chance that that might not make up a big part of your plan, but also a lot of, at the same note, it can put a lot of strain and pressure on people to have to do everything every day. So the ideal or the desired model that most people want to get to, which I think when it comes to having teams, is that there's an autonomous model. So either it's an autonomous model where people are able to pick up on services that you're doing yourself, or be able to implement different things, like instead of being the jack of all trades and the master of none, being able to stay within your lane and focus on the things that you're really good at and be able to concentrate on the efforts to grow and do the things you want to do in your business. So what this does is it allows for you to free up more of your calendar, be able to have more people that are doing different roles and responsibilities, can focus more on what am I doing with the business versus just letting the business be and then eventually saying, hey, I hope it works out, which we've seen a lot of people just even in traditional, like the general practice side of things. So many of them are getting to a part in their lives where they haven't really focused on it. They've been sucked in that genius model for the longest time. And now they're just so burnt out that they're just like, I want out as quick as I can. So they haven't really focused on planning in a way. And then the growth of what they're trying to do in their business has been neglected for a while, or they don't understand what the overall idea and the direction of it's supposed to go. So when you can shift from that genius model to an autonomous model, that's where you can have a lot of impact and be able to focus more on the things that you find fulfilling yourself, which is where like how CJ and I have separated our business to where we are trying not to be the only people in it, so it can run and be able to do the things that we need to do when we're not here as well. So with this being said, what would you consider the most valuable asset in your business? So like if you are a business owner, what is your most valuable asset? I'm just curious, can anyone put something in the chat? I'd just be interested to see what people would say what it is. Love it. you all are fantastic. Look at this. Employees, the team, reputation. So it's your employees. So like at the end of the day, like a lot of times people will put an emphasis on like the value of my business, the income that comes from it, or the real estate that I own. But a lot of the times when you have a business, if you don't have a team, you're having to do it all. And at the end of the day, like it either causes your income to drop a lot, causes you to have to work extended hours than you'd want to. So your most valuable asset is your team, it's your employees. And what we notice a lot when it comes to planning is that attitudes spread from the top down. So when it comes to having a good team, and I'm sure this kind of makes sense to a certain degree, if it doesn't, let me talk about this for a moment, is that depending on how you run your business and the attitude and the energy that you bring to it and how you communicate with the team is how a lot of the rest of the team is going to interact with each other and how the culture will get created over time. So there are times where we've found owners that are completely disengaged and they don't spend a lot of time checking with their team or trying to figure things out or having conversations with them. They're always so stuck in their own little bubble that you can see where kind of like a certain standard or however you want the business to be run, maybe you have it in your mind, but then what's actually happening is completely different because of how I am as the owner is being able to communicate and portray that out to the people. So the more and more that you look at the business of saying, how am I being able to work with my team? I have to first focus in on, okay, what am I portraying out and projecting out to everyone else along the way? So one thing is concentrating a lot on employee wellness is something that we'd want to make sure we're spending a lot of time on, is that when you can focus on making sure that your team is happy and being along the way where even certain things of being able to check in with your team periodically and spending time with them to talk with them, making sure that they have adequate time to be able to decompress and be able to not have to be so absorbed with work all the time. Things like could be even like having an adequate amount of paid time off is a big part of it, is making sure that's something that's in the plan. Better communication. We find that a lot of employees, when expectations and things are not being clearly laid out for people, and you might have something that's in your mind saying, hey, I want this to be done, but it's not being clearly communicated to the rest of the team, and they don't fully understand what your results that are looking for at the end, can cause a lot of frustration and a lot of tension within an organization. And then over time, what will happen is that those, it can keep compounding. It can keep becoming more and more of an issue. So communication is incredibly vital. And I know it's something, an example of our team, what we do is that every day we do 10-minute check-ins with everyone on our team. We all work remote too, so it's a little different in some fashion, but 10-minute check-in calls. And then we have a Thursday WIG meeting that we do, where a WIG meeting means wildly important goal. I usually joke around to put a wig on. Hopefully it doesn't seem too unprofessional, but just try to keep the mood lightened up. And the idea is to sit down and say, okay, this is the expectations that we've established every week. These are your goals and things that we've been focusing on. What have you done well every week? What haven't you been able to get accomplished? Where are you struggling? How can I help you? And if you are doing this, fantastic. It should be something you're doing on a very consistent basis, at least once a week, but making sure your communication is really well with your team. When you find the right people for your organization, which I know a lot of this is becoming a huge challenge, I think across the industry as a whole, we've even have challenges ourselves when it comes to finding the right people, is when you have good employee wellness, is that you can be able to bring people on, and then they can actually, like when you can make sure that they feel like there's purpose and that they're involved in the organization in a way, it can create less people to leave. So I've noticed that we have certain companies and practices we've worked with that they just have tremendous cultures that they have established within them, that it doesn't matter what kind of pay someone else is providing or what organization that they'll be going, that they could go to. There's just the way that they're interconnected within their practice has caused them to be like, I don't want to go anywhere. Like, I love where I'm at. Like, it's great. And then also too, when there's a lot of wellness, really good employee wellness can help increase better medicine and better just practices and standards across the board. So some ideas that you can do to help shift culture, and some things that's even being an owner and focusing on, focus on ways to create gratitude. I've found that one really great way to be able to do something is where you can, every day, I did it for quite a while, even myself, was to write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. If any of you have tried that before, it's actually very challenging. You get about maybe a week in, and then you're just like, what am I thankful for anymore? And then I'm like, well, I'm very thankful that I have a pen that I can write with right now. And it starts getting you to like really start thinking, and it's you're trying to change that perspective that you're having around stuff. You can create an inspiration board. And that could be a way just to kind of like people want and be able to dream about, and the environment that you're trying to create within. Host events. I had someone recently that I was talking to that very consistently, I believe it's like once a month or once every couple of months, her team, family will get together and they do something. It could be some kind of an activity you can do. And then make sure you're taking time to celebrate wins and milestones. So things like work anniversaries and successes that they had. And make sure when you are providing any type of, what's the word, any type of encouragement or celebration for people. Some people like to be celebrated in front of others, and then some people don't. So make sure to identify how you interconnect with them to make sure that it is working in a way to where it connects with that person. Implement systems, schedule time, hire someone that you can keep in charge of being able to do these things, which I always say when you're a business owner, it can be very difficult to stay in front of these things and keep them on top of mind when it seems like there's always other priorities, which is a huge challenge for a lot of people. Just making sure that if there is someone, you can either hire someone, delegate the responsibility to make sure someone's keeping on top of these things. So like an example could be if you have someone like an office manager or an executive assistant, or someone could be the person that could be taking lead on that and making sure it's being handled at all times, and then promote a lot of good stuff. Some good ideas that you can think of, I think of, is making sure people are getting sleep. You can always be checking in with your team to make sure that they're getting enough sleep. I notice when I only get 5 to 6 hours of sleep, I start getting very grumpy by the middle of the week. So make sure that people are not getting too absorbed with, social media and their phone. Like, is there a way that you can provide an environment to get them to disconnect from that a bit more? Also be able to have them find time to be able to promote certain educational things and webinars. A lot of them are TED Talks, different presentations that can be offered. I know one thing that can be, even from a culture shift, if you're looking to provide some financial education or different things along the way, there are ways to provide resources like that for teams so they can be able to get more confidence along the way. If you have an office, make sure that there's, maybe you can provide healthy snacks instead of donuts and all those other different things that are just riddled with sugar and everything else. So these are some really just ideas you can take away from this. Of course, the implementation of it, at times there's a little bit more conversation that you can have, but make sure that if you want to take a screenshot of this or write down some of these thoughts. I'm happy, like I was saying yesterday, I can always get the slide deck too if any of you want a hold of this. Some action steps that you can take. So there are some things that you can do, like a stress test, so you can be able to gauge people's level of stress. So if there are people if you haven't taken a moment to sit down with everyone, if you have multiple employees, how are they feeling? Where are they at personally and in the business? Like, be able to really understand how they're handling things in their own lives and how they're handling things within the business, to get them refocused again and help make sure that there's someone there with them. There's one thing that CJ brought up a long time. They're called chaplains, and they're basically people that are meant to just listen. So if you don't have the time to spend to listen to people, of course, we're not, I hate to say this, but I also just will say it out loud. Like, when you are a business owner, ultimately, at the end of the day, you're not here to solve all of your employees' challenges and your teammates' problems. So you should be able to listen and help them, and at least give them some guidance and some direction and support. But the chaplains can be another person to another degree that can just sit there and listen to them. And they can go on a monthly around. They can go around and be able to check in every so often to see how, hey, are you okay? Do you need to talk about anything? There's worksheets that you can work through, stressor worksheets, and get creative with staff perks. There's some really cool things, like you can see babysitters, pet sitters, cleaning services, dinners to their home, just a lot of different things. Like, it could be, if they have a spouse, maybe provide them with the ability to get like date nights or something with their spouse. Who knows? The opportunities are abundant when it comes to that. So management. when we always look at someone who's looking to manage an organization. So if you are the manager, of course, we need to make sure that the right person is in the right seat. And at the same time, if you are going to continue to play that role, that understanding like what are the attributes that I need to have as a manager. If you are finding yourself being really absorbed in the business and you can't spend as much time as you need to manage, then you need to shift and then find someone else that can handle those responsibilities. And of course, if this is like, if you're in a position where you're like, well, my business doesn't support having someone, of course, at the end of the day, the idea is like, if that's a goal of yours, then it should be a focal point of like, how do I get to a point where I can bring this person into my business? But when it comes to management, there's a lot of things that we need, attributes that they need to have in order to really create a good, successful team. So if you are the manager, this is a good time to kind of look at yourself and say like, hey, am I doing this for my team? If there is someone on the team that is in management and you're looking at all of this and saying, hey, are they really bringing this to the table? Because at the end of the day, the person who is helping keep the whole business glued together as a whole, it needs to be able to keep some sort of harmony and keep people constantly like focused on the things that they need to be focusing on. Otherwise, it can just create a lot of, again, frustration, lack of communication. So like some things that I just want to point out from here, you bring a positive attitude. So a lot of times it can be very easy as we're going throughout our days to feel kind of like in a crummy mood. So like that person who is in management needs to be constantly bringing a good attitude. They have a able and willing to spend time and energy to help and build relationships with people in the business, collecting feedback constantly from the team. So these things are incredibly important when it comes to working within teams, because otherwise, if everyone's just kind of doing their own thing and we're trying to make sure everyone's working in harmony with one another, if we're not spending the time to do taking these time to focus on this within the workplace, it's very easy for everyone to lose track of stuff. And then we get 6 months down the road, 3 months down the road, a month down the road, and we're completely in a different spot than we wanted to be. And I will tell you, once people start creating habits and behaviors along the way, it's very difficult to pull those back. There's some statistics actually on that real fast. When people, for habits and behaviors, what I've always heard is that it takes about 21 days to create a new habit. So those are things that are like very simple to adjust. But when you're trying to make them into a lifelong new habit, I've read some things with psychologists and different professionals out there that it can take a year, 2 years, and the constant focal point of making it something that you do. So if there's certain things that you are trying to change personally with yourself to be able to do these things, it needs to be something that it'll take a little while to make it kind of a consistency. And then over time, it's something, if you want it to become ingrained in who your character is and who you are as a person, it's something you have to keep doing over and over and over, and making it very intentional in your life to do that. So I have some things, like I know for reading as an example, like I wanted to learn a lot. I would read and make it a part every single day during the weekday, that I would read for at least 30 minutes. I'd get up at 5 o'clock and I became so disciplined to it. And then I would learn to take a lot of the things to implement them into my life along the way. So my first year in business, I read over 100 books, which some people look at me like I'm crazy when, when I did that. So with all of this, so the management, if we get the right people in management, there's different benefits that can be provided. And we usually call them the 3 R's, which we have an A in here, which it shouldn't be. It should be called recruit. But you can see there's a little pirate friend on the side there. We call them the 3 R's because whenever there's certain benefits provided to teams or looking to motivate people or attract others to work with you in some form or fashion, we break them down into 3 different R's. The first one is what we call recruit, or out here it's called attract. The second one is reward. And then the third one is retain. So when we're looking to spend dollars, or we're looking ways to be able to provide things for our team in a way to where it makes it very fruitful and beneficial for everyone, we need to understand like what fits into each one of these categories. So what starts in like the recruitment and reward side of things is that a lot of times people will think of these plans in front of us, like 401ks, health insurance. These can be things that people think are retention opportunities to bring people in and keep them in a business. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if someone else is offering these same perks and benefits, you're on equal playing grounds now. There's nothing changing that from keeping someone there. There's certain fringe benefits. There are just different perks and programs that can be offered, cash bonuses, stock ownership, phantom stock. There's some things that can be able to reward people in a certain particular way. Like I've had, even you can be more creative on a reward side of saying, hey, I want to reward people. And then instead of giving them cash, where a lot of people where they default to thinking where I reward someone is I give them a cash bonus, where most of the time people give cash bonuses without really any true connection behind why they earned that bonus, other than saying, hey, we did better this month, we did better this year, here's a cash bonus. And it doesn't really create a way to engage and motivate people to a higher level. So we tend to find cash bonuses, they can be used, but they need to be used in the right way, which I'm not going to get in super depth around that today, but really the whole idea would be is finding, like, if I'm trying to reward them, sitting down and looking at your team, and if it's individuals or if it's groups of people, what are things that, like, one or two things that that person can focus on that can help drive more profits in the business, and then being able to create a way to track that, and then at the end of it, reward them for hitting those goals. So if they hit those goals, it could be a cash bonus. It could be, you could literally ask them and say, okay, if we reach this, what would you like? And one of our clients, they actually, this team said they wanted popcorn bowls. There's a movie theater, a local movie theater, that I think it was like $60 a bowl for popcorn bowls. And they got unlimited popcorn. They get a bowl of popcorn every single day from this movie theater. And the team, like the entire team, just wanted the popcorn bowls. They didn't even want cash bonuses for hitting the certain things. So there are ways that you can be very creative with rewards. But then recruitment, some of the most common things that we look at are like 401ks, health insurance, dental, vision. It could be things like offering like CE reimbursement, travel expenses, babysitter stuff. It could be a lot of different things. It's kind of drawing people, like if you're looking for talent to bring them to you, that you're offering them something that's like, okay, wow, this is great. Like I get a lot of these different perks while I'm here to be a part of the team. I usually, from a stock ownership standpoint, and this one probably shouldn't be here on a rewards thing, but we put it on here for the pure fact because sometimes people will think of that. So if you have a business entity and then you're looking to give that person part of the ownership of it, usually don't encourage that from a reward standpoint, because, well, hey, if I do this, I'm actually creating a whole new dynamic in my business. So once you give someone part ownership of your organization, it now creates extra complexity, because now that person also has like they have skin in the game particularly, but now they also have say. And now it's a matter of like, if you're going to do that, and if you ever want to get that person out and it doesn't really align anymore, what are the ways that you can be able to unwind it? And it's very hard to unwind when you have ownership with other people, where there's things like buy-sell arrangements come into play to walk through the terms of like, how am I going to be able to do this in that fashion? So on the flip side of this, there's retention programs. And when we look at retention programs, these can be for specific people. So recruitment programs are usually for everyone. Retention programs can be for like one person, a couple of people, like you can pick individuals and provide them something. And really the idea behind a retention program is it has to meet 4 different types of qualities. The first one you can see is substantial. We talked a little bit about this yesterday in the conversation. Lori had asked a bit more about it. Substantial meaning like, hey, if I'm going to keep them here for a certain time period, what am I going to provide them in cash bonus afterwards? And the number that we found to be the most advantageous for people is you take whatever they're going to make during that time period. So let's say it's 10 years. You total up all of the money that you're going to pay them, and then you multiply that by a percentage. That percentage we found is about 25 to 35%. So if they're going to make $1 million over 10 years, this is an example, you'd be looking at between $250,000 to $350,000 of cash you're going to provide them in a bonus for staying with you. So if it's a 10-year time period, it has to be deferred. So number 2, so they can't get it without being there the entire time period. So it's really meant to kind of be like a carrot dangling in front of them of saying like, hey, look, this is going to get paid to you if you stay here for 10 years. If you leave early, you lose it. There's a cost recovery component to it. They leave, nothing out of your pocket. If you're putting money aside, you get to recapture that money back into your business. And then it solves a specific need. So maybe they have children they want to put through school. Maybe they want to buy into a business. Maybe they're interested in having more funding for retirement. They have student loans. This is something that could be talked with them about, like, hey, these are some, if you're having side conversations with any of your teammates saying like, look, I want to make sure that we're able to implement, I want to provide you a benefit, and maybe finding out a little bit more about what are the things that they are having concerns with or stresses around, and being able to use that as something you can lean on. So when it comes to implementing these, I just want to take a quick step back. If this is anything you're looking to want to do, usually you would identify who they are. You'd find out what you're paying them is the first part here, or whatever they're making. You'd multiply whatever the amount that you would pay them. We'd figure out what that benefit amount is, and then finding the best options or vehicles to put that money into first. So we first narrow down who, how much, where would we put it. Then the conversation would be had with that person to say, hey, look, I'm going to implement something for you. And then from there, there might be steps that they have to take. And then an attorney would get pulled in at the end of it to draw up an agreement saying that this is the way it's going to work. So a lot of the times they call these deferred compensation programs. 409A is, if you're ever wanting to look up the tax code for it, 409A is the actual tax code. It allows for you to, and this is the word they use, is you can discriminate for particular people instead of offering it to everyone, which is a good thing about it. So if you're trying to wonder, like, who are people in my business that would really be key to me, like, who would they be? So these are some things that we would look at from a key person. They impact revenue or sales, profitability. They have certain specialties. They have a huge impact on the culture. Maybe they are someone that can be there beyond the owner. Maybe they want to buy the business at some point. They make it more valuable. They can help grow it, hard to replace. They have key relationships with people. So a key person doesn't have to be someone that's similar to you. It could be someone like, this person is super vital to my business. And if they're gone, like, it's going to really hurt me, my time. It's going to hurt the profits. Could hurt the team if we have other people as employees. So these are some attributes you'd want to look through and ask yourself of, like, do any of the people that I work with meet this criteria? And then again, when we were talking about earlier about implementation, I forgot I threw this in here. And to identify, determine, choose the benefit, ensure it will be there, offer a benefit that's emotional. So this is the 5 steps that you would go through. So with all of this being said, I just want to make sure I throw this in here. When it comes to offering certain benefits and when it comes to planning, a lot of times people aren't really considering this from a planning perspective of how eventually they're going to exit or transition out of their business. So if your business has a saleable value to it, there might be an opportunity to transition it. If you have other people that do what you do, there can be a chance to sell it to them. But how are the ways that I can leave my business in the future? So the first one is, either you could sell it to someone you have in the business. If you are trying to transfer ownership because of, well, I don't really have anything that's sellable except for the goodwill, which would be like your name, the people you've worked with, nothing that's super tangible or ongoing revenues that are being specifically generated. You might be just having to figure out a value based off of that. And if you are selling it to someone else, there is a chance to be able to do that and maximize that value. If you do have something that's sellable, you can consider any outsiders. So maybe an organization or a different company can look to buy it, or you can keep it until eventually you pass. So you can just sit here and say, well, I'm never going to sell this. I'm just going to keep it. And maybe at some point you can look to transition the responsibilities to someone else, and you can still retain a certain amount of ownership in the business to make sure that you're continuing to keep receiving some kind of profits. So when we look at all this planning, and something that's very important to look at from planning is that if you're looking to plan for a business as a whole and you're the owner, there's 3 key areas that you want to look at. Making sure you're maximizing whatever your retirement income is going to be, what you're planning on that side. Making sure you have a plan in place to keep the business going. So other employees, retention programs, different insurances, lots of different things. Maximizing legacy, minimizing any taxes on the transition of your assets in the future. And typically what you'd want to do is making sure that you have a well-designed exit plan along the way to make sure that you're doing all this. And I understand from concept and some of these things, like I can go a lot more in depth around this. But just some things that if you haven't been considering this or have been talking about it, or if it's completely new concepts to you, these are things that I'd highly suggest that you write down and start thinking about and start trying to plan for. And if you need people to work with, start seeking out different professionals that can help with this. So I am pretty much wrapped up from here. Just got a couple of things I was going to put on the screen again with this. If you want contact information, so you can also contact us just so it's here. I think it was a question yesterday. But are there any questions or things that I can kind of elaborate on or answer while we're here?
Tom, can you explain what a phantom stock is and how you use that as a, retainment?
Yeah, phantom stock would really be more of a reward type program. And the idea is that the phantom stock is that instead of actually giving ownership to someone else, what you're doing is you're saying, well, I'm going to provide you a certain percentage of the profits as if you owned part of the business. So what happens is an agreement that gets written up to where it says that, like, for a certain time period or for whatever length of however you want it to be, that for you being with me, and it could be an increasing scale over time, depending on if they hit certain benchmarks within the business, that, hey, for this year, I'm going to give you 2% of profits this year. Next year, I'm going to give you 5% if you hit this. Next year, I'm going to give you 10%. But then at any point or another, you go to sell the business or get out of ownership, they have no rights to any of the sale proceeds or anything else. So they're not attached to it, and you don't have to worry about them to be injecting any of their input on how you want to run the business. So it's similar to like ownership. If you give ownership, but now they also have now they have a piece.